Hi everybody. Welcome to the June 12th installment of the K8s Infra working group. I am your host, Aaron of Sigbeard. It's been a good bit since we met last because KubeCon EU kind of destroyed some of us and some of our calendars. So I apologize for maybe the slow catch up here. Let's roll through our recurring topics, which is going to end with us walking through everything we have in our milestones to see where we're at. And if we have time left over at the end and there's stuff folks want to talk about, we'll talk about open discussion. So is there anybody new here who would like to introduce themselves?
Hey everyone, my name is Amy, so I'm a system software engineer at VMware. Currently, I try to target upstream cluster API, but I would love to help out here if possible.
Awesome. Welcome, Amy, and appreciate your help. Okay. Hey, it's Tim Hawken. How you doing?
Aaron with the best shirt ever. Ever.
Let's get all the cats in there. There we go.
That shirt deserves to be on a billboard outside Las Vegas.
So who wants to answer my favorite question with this group, which is how much money did we spend and what did we spend it on?
Justin, do you want to answer it from the report and I will answer it from the bill?
Yes, we can demonstrate the value of the man with two watches or the person with two watches. I will pull that up. Yes, this will lead another action item, which is presumably to reconcile the two numbers.
Now that we're all in the post-KubeCon haze, we can actually get back to real work.
Right. I mean, just so to recap, right, I ask this question every meeting in the hopes that one day I will no longer have to ask this question because it will just be a report that we can look at.
So we do get a report. Like I get an email every day that says, here's your GCP billing report. I just don't have a whole lot of trust in it yet.
I trust that it is wrong.
Okay.
So Justin wrote it, so it's probably wrong.
What time period are we looking at? Sorry.
Well, it'd be cool if we could talk about since we last met, which would be the last 30 days, more or less.
I have a report from May 15th to June 11th is my default. I think we spent $327.
May 15 to June 11?
Okay.
Let me add the same range. May 15 to June 11. I show that's
also,
not
while I'm waiting here, does somebody want to volunteer to take notes while we're doing this? I tend to try and take notes. I tend to try and like drop action items in issues as I walk the board, but it's difficult for me to sort of walk and talk at the same time with respect to meeting notes.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Tim.
Sorry, Justin, what number did you say?
327.
I have 384. But I also have a sort of complicated, hold on, let me get out of your full screen because now I can't see anything.
Oh, sorry.
It's not your fault. Well, I mean, I guess it is. I have the cost, but I also have promotions and discounts and a weird, actually, it looks like we have a negative balance. So like the way the credits and the committed use stuff is being applied isn't exactly transparent from this view.
I share the same. I think we should figure out how to reconcile it. But yes, we have a report. It also struggles with these credits, and we should, or I will take an action item to try to understand why 327 is not 38, whatever you said.
Right. It could literally be like the difference of a day, like maybe one's inclusive and one's exclusive.
Okay.
But we're close. We're within spitting distance.
So one of the hopes and dreams I have in the context of this billing report is the ability to understand like which of our clusters is costing us how much money and which services running on which of those clusters is costing us money.
Yes, and as soon as we turn on clusters, I'm 100% in agreement. As soon as we turn on those clusters, we need to start addressing that. And I know we talked a little bit with Arnaud in Spain and I see some pull requests in my mailbox
Okay.
around cluster turnup. So,
all right. So I think I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I honestly don't recall looking at the meeting notes if we had any specific AIs for this. For this meeting, my thought was we could just sort of walk all of the issues that are in the milestones and see what we get as a result of that. How does that sound to everybody? Okay. Sharing my screen. By the way, Justin, I super appreciate the use of Comic Sans. Thank you for following through on that.
I will say it is less funny when you get in your email every day.
Okay. So, right, I like dark mode the world, so welcome to dark mode GitHub. To refresh everybody's memory on the milestones, we're working on the ready to migrate milestone. This is everything that we have to get done before we're ready to start like migrating things over wholesale. And then there's like low risk stuff to migrate, and then migrating over other stuff like Kubernetes tests. I think maybe we can at the end talk about whether or not this is the right structure for everybody. So in ready to migrate, I sort of have it broken down into a couple areas. Since we were talking about billing, let's talk about billing. So per namespace billing information, I think we had an action item to understand whether or not this is even possible. So per namespace would sort of be like given a cluster, if we partition services and apps and stuff by namespace, do we get billing data by namespace?
So it is possible. The technology exists. Absent clusters, it's hard to prove that it works. So we need to get the clusters turned on and activated for this. And I think it's a beta thing still, so we can get the numbers somehow.
Tim, do you know if they dump it into BigQuery or what happens?
I believe for now they dump it into BigQuery, yes.
Cool, so we could just extend the report.
This is the use case.
Great.
Justin, if you have the cluster turnup script, if you can create one for publishing bot, I can move them immediately and start using it.
I think someone else was working on the cluster creation script, right?
Yeah, that's or no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's come back to that. Whoa, where did all my milestones go? So we sort of had the same question from a storage perspective for billing. If we start to enter a brave new world where arbitrary subprojects and SIGs get to create arbitrary artifacts everywhere, are we going to understand like which of them are costing us the most money in terms of storage and transfer, things of that nature?
So I think, sorry, Justin, go.
No, you can go.
I was going to say, I think the answer is yes, but I would like to convince myself by just writing a bunch of stuff in there and convincing me that we can get the report that we actually want to see from it.
So far, we've spent 1 cent this month on cloud storage, but if we had a little bit more data, we probably could understand better what the granularity we can get.
Exactly. So we may just need to upload gobs and gobs of dev zero just to cause it to spend money.
I can help with that, with the cups artifact.
I was just going to say that. Why don't you move yours just to then?
I am getting there. We can talk about that separately, but I'm getting there.
Okay, and so this is sort of, I think, a review of what you were saying, Justin. You are getting an email in your inbox every day that has Comic Sans.
I can send that to a group if we create a group. We don't have. It's not dead accurate, but it is order of magnitude accurate right now.
And we still feel like we need parity.
Closer.
Justin, we can actually send it to the cluster admins at Kubernetes IO group already. We have a group, so let's just use that.
Cluster admins at Kubernetes IO. Okay.
I'll send you the exact thing
Thank
on
you.
Slack.
Okay, so my big question for the 3 of these things, Justin, is you're a very busy man. Where is the code for all of this? And if somebody wanted to help out with this stuff, how would they get involved?
There is, good question. It's in a report in the Google product known as Data Studio. I don't know how we can export that like to Git, I'm afraid. But that's primarily it. I think there's one supporting query, but I think it's actually embedded in the report. I think I can share it with people. I don't know if I can export it and get it audited.
Is it the sort of thing that can be shared with like a group? Where I feel like we have this pattern where we use the groups that are defined in the YAML file. We can add people to that, reconcile the groups, and then that sort of allows people to work on different areas of the infra.
I suspect so. I suspect what we can't do is, or I don't know if we can easily audit changes by dumping it like into a Git repo.
Okay, so I think my ask isn't so much to turn this into a fully GitOps driven thing just yet, but I think my ask is to find a way to allow other people to work on this.
And I think I can do that. I'm in the sharing screen. If you give me, I don't know if we can, I'll look at whether we can automate it.
Okay.
Can the queries and like the dashboard config be exposed? Like can that dump to YAML or JSON or something?
I can have a look.
I'm just curious.
I will find out.
Okay. Sorry, you're all getting to hear my awesome mechanical keyboard. It's awesome. It's rainbow. It's fun. Okay. I think I'm done talking about billing unless anybody has anything else.
In case anybody cares, the lion's share of the compute this month went to the N1 machines that are running the cluster. SSD is the next biggest, and then DNS was $40 at 104 million queries this month, and since 5/15.
Cool. Okay, let's talk about clusters and cluster management. So I'll start with what seems to be the umbrella issue and see what it says at the bottom. Okay, I probably need to update what the umbrella issue says. Let's look at some of the other issues. So I think the one we're sort of most interested in is burning down and recreating the cluster via scripts. And Mukim has been working on this and iterating on this. And Tim, I think I saw a PR containing a lot of bash from you as well.
So my PRs are moving the bash around to make it a little more accessible and less buried in a weird place that doesn't belong anymore. They didn't fundamentally change the scripts. Arnaud shared a PR or two with me that I need to review at my next opportunity to spend time on this.
Okay, I really, really want us to get this over the line. My bandwidth is not super great, but like, I have concerns that maybe we're holding ourselves to too high a bar here, and we're not just merging and iterating. Or maybe it's that we're like too bottlenecked on high traffic individuals or something. But I feel like we've been waiting to go on this for a while.
Well, that's certainly true. But this is not an incremental thing. This is like if you bring up the cluster and you have it configured fundamentally wrong, like the whole thing's wrong. And like we looked at it, we sat down with Hippie and Arnaud in Spain, and we looked at it, and there was a bunch of comments, and I'm sure that he has addressed those comments since then. But it's not a like just do one little thing. It's actually a fairly involved script. So I'm happy to have other people take a look at it. Like, please don't by any means like just sit there doing nothing because I haven't looked at it. but we do have to make sure that we get it right.
Yeah. One other PR that Arno filed was to create a group that can be specified during the GK cluster turnup, and we merged that, and the group got created also.
Is that the RBAC group?
Yes.
Okay.
In the G Cloud command line, you have to pass the name of a Kubernetes IO group. So that was the one that.
And that's the group that has members of the other groups that are allowed to do RBAC stuff, right?
Right. Right now we have individuals there, but then we can add groups also there.
Okay.
So we're talking about this PR that added the K8s Infra cluster operators group.
Yes.
And these are the people in the group. And if you want to help develop.
Oh, sorry. No, that's different than what I was thinking of.
Okay.
What is this? What is it? We already have K8s Infra cluster admins. Why do we have cluster admins?
No, this one is what you were talking about, Tim. Can you go to conversation, please?
Yeah.
And click on
in this. Okay. Yes. Sorry.
In that, and click on 275.
Yes.
So scroll down a little bit. Yeah, see that G Cloud beta container clusters create my cluster security group equals.
Yes,
This is the one. Yep.
Okay.
And we figured out that it's not hard coded to G key security. It's just that you have to make sure that when you're following the
example
README, they said make sure you don't change the name. So we ended up using the dash operators.
Okay, operators feels like a weird name to me, but I'll take it to the PR. That's flagged to look at, even though it's already merged.
Okay, you can change it, and I can recreate a new list.
Okay, I think
so. That's very high. Just Aaron, to your concern, that's very high on my priority list. I'd be happy to have other people take a look at it from a bash and correctness point of view. I make a few hours at least every week to look at these sorts of issues, and now that most of the KubeCon backlog is burned off, this is the top of my heap.
Like I'll just what I've heard other people tell me, for example, is to maybe peek behind the curtain of the clean and tight running ship that is Kubernetes test infra. We don't really have scripts that we use in a GitOps driven manner to like create the clusters that we run all of our test infrastructure on.
That's right. And if something goes wrong, you can't recreate it.
It's all done super manually, right? But I feel like we had talked in the past about how the objective here is to migrate everything over and then to start iterating on it to make it this more ideal GitOps driven stuff. And I have concerns that we're holding ourselves to the higher bar that we're not even following right now with all of our existing infrastructure. I agree with the ideal, but I am hearing pressure from others that like, what's the holdup? Can't we just do what we've always been doing? It's just a different Google Cloud account. What's the big deal?
The big deal is that we have, like before we had infinite funds, because Google was just paying for it silently, and now we no longer have infinite funds, and we are actually beholden to people to answer how we're spending it. So I'm not comfortable just saying, it's fine, you've got a project, go do whatever the hell you want.
So the counter argument is we've only been spending like a couple $100, and we have a ceiling of a couple $1 million. And it's unclear to me whether those millions of dollars were doled out as a lump sum of dollars or as a lump sum of credits or in terms of credits that expire on some kind of annual basis.
They are an annual 3-year, I believe, I'm trying to remember the details. It was a 3-year grant, $3 million a year, and they do not expire as far as I understand. So, yes, we've not spent our $3 million for this year, but once we open the floodgates, like the money, like the $9 million wasn't a number we pulled out of the air. That was like to cover the actual expenses, right? Yep. And so once we open the floodgate, like the money will start to disappear fast. And we won't have any way to understand where it's going or how it's getting spent if we don't say you need to do a modicum of proof at the beginning that you're doing the minimal thing that you can get away with.
So Tim,
So
is up.
to
Somebody else.
go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, me.
Tim's then Christoph.
Yeah. So, Tim, one of the reasons why I don't end up looking at the thing is like, typically what I do is I try something out and see if it works fine, and then go poke at the cluster, for example, right? But I don't have an account, so I can try the PR out. You see what I'm saying? So that's stopping me from actually actively reviewing and suggesting changes to the patch. And
so I'm happy to give individuals who are steering this whole thing broader access. I'm not comfortable at this point, and maybe I can be talked back off this ledge, but I'm not comfortable just saying like, hey, SIG testing, here's a project with all the APIs enabled, go crazy. Because SIG testing is where the lion's share of the money is going to go.
Right. I kind of agree with you on that, at least right now. If we can get a few more people added who can try things out, especially the PRs that are being filed.
Oh, sure. I have no problem. I have no problem with that. And in fact, we've done this for, like Arnaud's got a project that he has full access to for the development of this turnup script. I'm happy to give individuals access to do the development of these things. That's no problem.
Okay.
So if you want something like that, like ping me offline and I'll be happy to give you that. In fact, you should already have it. Like, why are you not why are you not org admin?
I don't know that you created one. That's why.
Okay.
I don't know that you created one for Arnaud, and that didn't flow through any of the usual stuff that I pay attention to.
Okay. Because that was a one-off, and that's exactly what I don't want, right? Like it's not documented because it's not a YAML or script or anything for it.
Right.
Christoph.
So, to add another kind of opinion to the mix, there's a difference, at least in my perspective, between saying, here's a project, go do whatever you want with it, spend as much money as you want, just go ahead. And setting up some policies, written down policies for what is acceptable and what's not, but not necessarily going as far as GitOps driven scripts. From what I understand is the current sprawl of test infra projects and clusters that we have, it's there, it exists. It's not super well documented, and it's changing. And we recently needed to go in and completely rebuild all of the disks on one of the clusters to get them up to 500 gigs for the main disk, so that it increased the IOPS of the instances, because we were hitting IOPS limits. So there's these clusters will be living, they will be changing. Having, I think, hamstringing us to say we need everything to be GitOps driven with a script, I don't know that is absolutely necessary for us to still, the billing is important, the IAM is important, understanding who's doing what, understanding where the money's going, having regular checkpoints to make sure that things worst case scenario, things go haywire for 2 weeks and we spend a whole bunch of money for 2 weeks. And then we revisit it and are whoa, what the heck happened here? Or hopefully even sooner if we're getting email reports. But I don't necessarily know that we need to go as far as scripts for everything. Because getting a script and tuning a script and debugging a script, while you can document everything through script, it may just be easier to be oh, we're just going to have a Google Doc or a GitHub issue, and oh, I went and I changed all the disks on here to 500 gig disks because of this IOPS thing. We documented it. We understand who did it, why it happened, set a policy, but we don't necessarily need to debug a change in a script to make that happen.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm actually really sympathetic to it because, you know, having written these scripts, they are not always easy or obvious, and I want to be clear. I'm not holding everybody to this line of this sort of mythos of GitOps that like actually hasn't been proven out. I'm saying I really just want the ability to recreate something if it goes sideways, and the ability to know by looking at a script or something what it's supposed to have, right? Like very concretely, Hippie was working on this IAM audit thing, which I don't know if it's done or not. I need to go back and look at his PR. But like when you run that, you will get a list of individuals who have IAM access to things. And the last time I ran it, I was surprised. There were people on there and I was like, why does this person have access to that thing by name instead of by group, right? And that was worrisome to me. And that's the sort of stuff that I don't want just sort of profligating around with no like check-ins on it. And so I'm trying to figure out how to strike the balance here. I know like Eric's really frustrated with my pushback on this. I've heard. So I'm trying to figure out how to just make sure we don't get into a Wild West situation where nobody knows what the heck's going on. Because that's where we are now. If you look at SIG testing, you say, what are all the APIs that you need for any random project? They're all turned on. Why are they all turned on?
But I would suggest could we be just as effective by setting written policies and enforcing them, and having like, if we have enforcement, if we have auditing, so we know who's turning on what. So like if somebody turns on an API and we have an audit trail of that, and then it doesn't get documented, we know who to go to and say, why are you doing this? That's not in policy. You should be documenting this. And potentially err on the side of like written documentation to get to that goal of like knowing what things should look like, as opposed to doing everything through scripting. I know we're software engineers. We kind of have that mindset of like everything could be solved through software, but is that necessarily the best solution to this problem? Is that going to get us like the minimum viable product now?
I would suggest one issue with that is that we have to give permissions to people to do those things, and we probably wouldn't give it to the whole community. But we would, in theory, like the whole community, be able to say, oh, you know, you should actually change to this instance type. It's better disks or whatever. I think we're also trying to get away from gatekeeping, both from the gatekeepers are busy and from we want to be a open type community. I did see a comment, which I don't think we've addressed, which was yours, Christoph, about Terraform. I don't know whether, I personally am not the biggest fan of Terraform, but I don't know whether Terraform might accelerate some of these efforts. I don't know whether the bottleneck is PR review on the bash and development of the bash, or whether it's like the actual development of the scripts themselves.
The idea that I'm trying to just toss out there, like I think like Terraform's an option, bash is an option. Like I don't really, to me, the issues there are the same, in that we're coming from an environment that is not very well documented, and to get from the environment that we have that is not well documented to an environment in these projects that just runs, there will probably be a whole bunch of iteration, and we don't know what that final picture looks at. And unfortunately, like a point of frustration is what the picture looks like right now is hidden behind the Google veil. Nobody other than people at Google can know what the current state of the world looks like, because nobody can look at the current state of the world if you don't have access to those Google projects.
Sorry, you just gave me an
but
interesting
just
idea.
like
Terraform reverse I'm going to look up whether we can Terraform reverse what that is to solve exactly that issue.
Oh boy! If we could, the idea that I would maybe propose is something along the lines of like, for something like our basic, like our like services clusters. So things that are going to host like redirector, things that are going to host the publishing bot, things like that that are like just general services that it's like, we just need a Kubernetes cluster to stick this on. That's pretty easy. Like having a script to stand it up, it's probably not going to change a whole heck of a lot. That's a whole lot easier and simpler to move forward than the thing that I'm most interested in, which is our test infrastructure and getting Prow, the build clusters, the Boscos clusters, the build execution, like all of those big test infra components over and into the public sphere. Because as soon as we get them into the public sphere and into these projects, other people can help. Yeah, I don't want to, if I'm the only one that feels this way, I'm totally fine with just like backing off and we proceed as we've been proceeding. But
well, clearly not.
The idea that I'm just pushing forward is the concept of like, could we get away with policies and documentation as opposed to code? And then maybe like stretch goal, one day we reverse engineer it back into code, back into Terraform once it's all in the public sphere.
Amy, you said you had your hand raised.
So I don't have a lot of context in terms of, a lot of this bringing up clusters and burning it down thing. My question is, has the group explored like cluster API, or maybe there's like some restrictions why cluster API is not useful for this use case?
I'm not sure that is the problem at hand. The problem at hand is more like what we've done in the past is, here's a GCP project, go spin up a cluster, go configure it by hand, go change things willy-nilly, and turn on APIs and create service buckets, storage buckets, and add IAM accounts and role bindings and those sorts of things. And it was relatively safe because it was only Google who could do it. And so like by policy, we're not allowed to add non-Googlers to these things. And so like it can't leak as easily. Once we move beyond that, the question is, well, can we just do that again, but now under the Kubernetes IO domain? And I'm anxious. I would rather do what we're trying to do with the storage stuff, which is figure out what is the bare minimum IAM account that I need to grant to a particular Google group so that members of that Google group can do the one specific thing that group is assigned to. The cluster turnup is but a drop in that. The harder part is actually, in my experience, finding the right set of IAM permissions to manage the permission that we need to grant, right? I don't know if anybody else, Justin, you've written a bunch of the script stuff. Like, I feel like that's where I spend most of my time. Go try it now. I added this new permission to you. Oh, that didn't work. Or go try it now. I added this other permission to you. Which, I won't comment on the state of documentation, but there's a remark in there somewhere. And so I'm not sure that Cluster API has a material impact on that, or if it does, it's not the lion's share. The lion's share here is, and Christoph, I'm super sensitive to what you're saying, and I am listening. We don't really know what's in the existing test infrastructure, and so it's really hard to apply bounds on permissions when we don't really know what people were doing in the first place.
DIMS.
So can we have like a middle ground somewhere where clusters are brought up to a specific stage and then people make changes, and then the policy kicks in saying when you're making changes to a live cluster, then make sure that there is corresponding PRs filed for the actual changes in the scripts also, and then so we can kind of like bootstrap ourselves out of this situation?
That's really all I want.
Okay.
The concern, the concern that I would have there is like the time to go and update a technical script and debug it, as opposed to just like writing an issue or writing a Google Doc or something to record, I made this change, as opposed to like solving it necessarily through software, especially if we're not even going to drive the change through the software.
Right. So basically the thing there is like, file an issue in the milestone, make sure assign somebody to work on it, and that kind of stuff, right? That
feeling,
seems okay to me.
My feeling is this is why I place such an emphasis on, are we getting our billing report so that we all have visibility on what we're spending our money on and where. And I think, Tim, you raised Hippie's IAM audit script. That has not been brought to completion. I think it should, because I sort of favor the model where we audit the things rather than forcing that we drive everything through automation. Because your concerns seem to be mostly about, do we know what we're doing? Which to me sounds an awful lot like audit. Is it all driven by a script seems to answer the sort of a DR scenario a lot more. And I am comfortable if there is a team that is willing to support a piece of infrastructure and their DR story is, we follow this step-by-step document instead of writing a script. I'm happy. I don't want to gatekeep that team.
So I'm very much listening, and I'm trying to reconcile that. I'm not purely concerned about billing, and I'm not purely concerned about audit in the IAM sense, which is what Hippie's scripts do. I'm concerned with not knowing how things are supposed to be. Right? When I poke around at the existing Google infrastructure, I can look at 2 different projects with 2 different settings, and I don't know which one's right. Right? When you look at things like various bits of policy that have been applied to, I'll pick on the storage stuff because we've actually scripted it now, but there's life cycle and retention policies on storage. Are all the staging repos supposed to have a very short retention policy? Well, now they are, because we've decided that that's a good thing. But in the legacy world, there's no way to enforce that. It's really just, well, I applied it to these 3 projects, but I didn't know about that other one over there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay. Maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of it than it really is. But these are the things that worry me when I have no idea what's actually happening or why.
So I am tempted to say that this has been a healthy discussion, but I'm not looking to drive us to any action item. And it might be more useful 20 minutes if we moved on to talk about artifact storage and some of the work that Justin's been doing.
All right. Can I have a last word then?
Yeah, and if anybody else wants a last word, I'm fine with that too.
My last word is, Christoph, your impassioned pleas are not falling on deaf ears. I am listening and considering how to navigate this. I have been dogmatic so far. I'm considering how I can lessen that.
Michael, I think you had your hand raised, and then Dims.
Yeah, so the problem I see with the old way and basically just moving to auditing and things like that, and not going with everything is written in code, even so everything might be just a probabilistic type thing, is that with open source contributors coming in and they might be leaving, the knowledge might leave. Like an issue is just easier written, and policy might be easier written. So there might just be more knowledge leaving than is possible with scripted scripts, basically. So I feel encoding the infrastructure, especially being an open project and having contributors willingly come in because they can find it and actually change something and test it, is a much open or better or open type thing, especially on where we want to go with Kubernetes in general. And also that might scale better than like a 5 to 10 people team that burns themselves out by auditing and going through hundreds, maybe even thousands of projects down the road.
Okay. Dims.
Yeah, quick. I have to head out for something. I'll come back and check the video when I get back. Thank you.
Justin.
I think we are all agreed that in a dream world we would have declarative configuration. I think we're debating whether the cost is worth it and the time is worth it. And I do appreciate the suggestions on other ways. I think they're good suggestions, but that's why I sort of suggested Terraform might be another shortcut. It's like, but anyway.
It's also Terraform. whatever. We're dealing with Bash. Yeah, my last word is perfect is the enemy of good. I think we're all super well aware of this. I wasn't trying to drive a decision here, but I think it's a conversation we need to have and consider as we look to add more things, because I really want us to stop gatekeeping. I really want to make it easier for new contributors to help out. Okay. That was a lot of discussion. I'm not really writing anything in this issue as a result of that. Maybe Tim Pepper took some great notes and I can summarize that. We'll see. Okay, let's talk about artifacts. Okay, so container image promoter. Let's start there. Where's the issue for this? Create an image promotion process, I think. Okay, so last time we talked, we said that we felt like we didn't want to actually turn it on because we were uncomfortable with the level of end-to-end testing, and we didn't think that we had a DR strategy for this.
That's right.
Amy has showed up to help out with the end-to-end testing a little bit. Thank you, Amy. What level of end-to-end testing is it that we are specifically looking for?
Some? Any?
Amy, can you maybe speak a little bit to where you're at, what you're working on, what help you need?
So basically, like I also would say that I don't really have any context for this, in the sense that the issue that I picked up was just migrating some like cloud builds kind of thing that I saw in the repo into Prow tests. And so the main reason that like I'd like to help out with image promotion is because I think it would be really useful for cluster API. Largely because I think right now we bother Justin a lot every time we need to cut a release. So I'd like to, offer whatever help I can, and then also it'd be really useful to gain what you all think, like what kind of ETE tests are necessary.
So how familiar
How
familiar are you with the state of that effort? Like, have you spoken with Linus or the other folks who are working on it?
So I was hoping to be able to get a hold of folks during this meeting, but when it seems like he was working on something. I'm not really sure what the state is. I just sort of picked up something that said it was a good first issue,
Okay.
and so that's where I am.
Cool. So I have no idea what the state of the EDE testing is. Oh, sorry, Justin's got his hand up.
I was just going to say, I'm going to be a co-maintainer if I'm not already on that repo, and I am happy to help out however I can.
I am speaking with both Linus and Linus's manager offline and anticipate increased availability of Linus in the next quarter to help out with this.
Awesome.
For context, like Linus worked on it for a while and then kind of had to go work on some other things, which is why he's not here right now.
So as far as we believe, the promoter works, right? Linus has done tests and demonstrations of it, and it works. And there are a very small number, like I think 4 staging repos that we've set up already, and we can do sort of proof of ability between those repos. What we don't have is any sort of automated way of knowing that when the promoter changes, that it doesn't accidentally wipe out the whole repo.
What do you mean by when the promoter changes?
Promoter itself is just a piece of software, and over time it's going to accumulate changes and features. And Justin wants to make it do artifacts, and somebody else will want to make it do something else. And every time those things happen, there's a risk that the promoter could nuke K8s.gcr.io, right? Or promote garbage or whatever, because it's got really sort of elevated privileges compared to what most humans will have. And we're at this point with the project where, like, if K8s.gcr.io disappeared, we'd be in a bad place.
Makes sense.
I was also wondering if we could reduce the scope of what the promoter does to make this testing more tractable. So for example, do we actually need the promoter to automatically delete images ever? Or would in practice, when we came to that, would we do that by hand?
That's a great question. It sure seems like it would be better to have that either be two separate programs or human driven. Historically, we've never deleted anything, right? And so like maybe that's just an okay policy. I mean, you know, even though we have images out there that are full of CVEs that are rotten to their core, somebody somewhere is probably still using it in a script, and we don't want to break them. So I don't actually know the state. I wish Linus were here. I don't know if he added the deletion support. The internal promoter that we're using against the Google version of this doesn't even have delete support.
Okay. I guess I also come back to, from a higher level perspective, whether or not we are trying to, does it make sense to make the promoter usable for sub-projects before we focus on using the promoter for the core images and repository and stuff like that? We've been aiming the other way, right? Thinking like, well, we got to get it done for core.
So we have this one special repo, k8s.gcr.io, which has some auto globalization stuff turned on. So if you access it from Asia, you get the Asia mirror, and if you access it from the US, you get the US mirror. That is not generally true of GCR registries. That was done for us special. So we could do promotion for other sub-projects, but they wouldn't be promoting to k8s.gcr.io. They'd be promoting to some other name. If that's okay with people, then yeah, we can do anything we want. But I thought one of the big goals here was to unify all of the various GCR repos under that one name and provide better subdirectories and access control via the staging mechanism.
Yes. Justin.
I think the underlying suggestion is like doing it for a SIG is an easier first step, particularly a SIG that doesn't yet have a repo that we need to maintain. And it does seem like with the promoter, we could promote to a particular name and then later on make an alias to k8s.gcr.io.
I don't understand what you mean by alias.
A CNAME, for example, would that work? So in other words, if we did something temporary like images.k8s.io, and then we later say, okay, everything now goes to I don't remember the names anymore. k8s.gcr.io, could we CNAME it? Could we CNAME images.k8s.io to k8s.gcr.io so that the names don't break after we've promoted it?
The short answer is no, because they would have to carry the certificate that resolves that name.
Ah, yes.
TLS.
My friend, TLS. Thank you.
Yes, that was one of the original considerations, was we just alias a k8s name to the Google Cloud repo, but that doesn't work. So more or less, if we want to do more sooner, we can pick another name, and it won't be a GCR name. It'll be like a gcr.io/something, right? The standard name. I guess maybe we can ask for another CNAME, but they were sort of grumpy about giving us too many of those. We could do that, but we pretty much have to live with it forever.
I guess I don't know. I always want to try and like move us forward and not gatekeep, but I feel like I would like to better understand or quantify our paranoia over this accidentally the repo. I think Justin's suggestion of maybe we never trust our automation to delete things could be a wise one. And I think understanding what level of E2E testing exists and we would want to make us sufficiently comfortable that when the image promoter code changes, it will do the right thing would be a useful thing for us to understand. Because like maybe Amy, you've looked through the issues in the container image promoter repo more than I have, or maybe you have, Justin. I don't know if there's like an end-to-end test plan that's spelled out there that we all agree is like, yep, that's enough. That's what
I think Linus wrote something down.
I believe he started, and I think we do have a dummy repo, and I just don't think it's full coverage yet. I think there is some code that generates like small images as well, for example.
I'm concerned that we're trying to find a way around doing the work when doing the work probably isn't really that hard. It's just a matter of doing it.
Right. That's what I'm suggesting, that like, I think we haven't actually quantified what the work is that we're trying to sidestep. And so I'd like for us to understand what the work is.
Yeah, that.
Is that a fair assessment?
So Amy, if you're volunteering, and bless you for that, maybe the right thing to do is to have a Slack or something with Linus and just build a comprehension of what he and you think is adequate E2E testing. And I think more or less we're going to go with whatever you guys say is enough, as long as we're collectively confident.
Cool. Sounds good to me.
I will just randomly throw out there, not to like defocus or descope or anything, but I do have a request out to GitHub to use their wonderful package registry as well, where potentially we could use that as a different staging repository for the image promoter. And I feel like that might be a little less gatekeepy because it would be tied to GitHub credentials as far as I know. Whereas I think right now people need to, remind me, what's the process to get access to a staging repo? Is it bug Justin?
Join one of the mailing lists.
Join one of the mailing lists, okay.
Or the groups, rather. That's it. And this goes back to the whole scripting thing of like, now that we have scripted this all out, it's really trivial. If you want to create a new staging repo, you submit a PR that creates a new group, and you submit a PR that adds one line to a script, and then the people who are administering it run the script, and now your staging repo is done. And the bot, now you can just go and make PRs against the manifest, and it moves them willy-nilly. I love the idea of using GitHub credentials to gate the staging stuff. I don't know how well the staging bot or the promotion bot would handle pulling across different registry providers. Maybe it would work.
Yeah, it's an open question.
Feature request.
I actually had the exact same thought. I was talking with GitHub about it, about doing that exact thing, and it just kind of dropped on my priority list. But it is something that I was thinking about as well. I did look into it in the promoter. Right now, our promoter, and I had asked Linus about it as well. Our promoter is very opinionated to GCR, and it doesn't actually do any like pulling or pushing of images. It's just doing like retagging and calls directly to GCR to like do specific things. So because it's so highly opinionated to GCR, there would definitely need to be some changes. That said, there's like libraries and tool sets that would potentially make that very easy to like, and hence at a later date, and make the promoter like able to handle any Docker V2 registry as opposed to like just GCR.
Yep.
But as it is today, the MVP that we have is GCR opinionated.
Okay, that is mostly what I would have expected. So thank you for looking into that. I think if we can get over the first hurdle, having it promote from anywhere would be wonderful. And I'm open to hearing people disagree with the goal of having a single target for all of this stuff. If that seems like a bad idea for reasons, then I would love to hear it.
Justin, you look like you were going to speak. I also kind of want to just give the last 3 minutes to you because we're not going to make it through all the artifacts issues. So if there's anything you think we need to know about the artifact related work you're doing, that'd be cool.
I don't remember what I was going to say. I don't think it could have been too important. I am working on adding binary promotion to the promoter, and Linus is doing a great job of reviewing my PRs to do that. So we should also at some stage get binary promotion into the same promoter.
Okay. So what is binary? When you're adding binary promotion, it's not really a container image promoter anymore, right? It's just like an artifact promoter.
It is a container and generic artifact promoter. So like the COPS binaries for kubectl, for example.
Okay.
And in fact, most of the projects around this have already been renamed from SIP or image promoter to artifact promoter. I think the project names themselves still say CIP, and there's maybe one other place because it was embedded in the GitHub stuff. So
let me add a note about that it seems like this is just trending towards general artifact promotion. My other question, Amy and or Justin, is like, what's the part of the process that requires poking Justin right now? Just so I understand.
You're talking about, I think,
For cluster, I think for maybe getting cluster API or something like.
Cluster API release requires someone with permission to a particular bucket, which I, as a Googler, have. I don't know who else has it. I am happy to do that. It acts as a good motivator to move this forward.
Yes. Yeah, I understand that. I'm just always, I'm always curious about the, like, what are the parts of releasing things that require Googlers? And
absolutely.
be less
Justin, are we confident that what we've laid out with the staging and prod buckets and GCR will cover the need here?
For cluster API?
Yeah.
Yes, I think the thing which I think is interesting, which is not clear, is the process will be a proud job, for example, will push a container. Someone will produce a PR to edit the manifest. Someone has to approve that PR. Now, I don't know how someone approves that PR. How do I know that SHA is what I think it is? That to me is the big unknown. But I presume we just do it on trust sort of thing. Ideally reproducible builds, but.
Yeah, well, in an ideal world, no human actually does any of this stuff, right? Like it comes straight out of some automated build system with some verifiable trace.
And it self-approves the PR?
No, a human can approve the PR, but a human can go look and say, like, click here and say that the build system produced hash XYZ.
Yes, okay.
And it's submitting hash XYZ. And
yes.
No human had a chance to muck with it in the middle.
So I would look at the log and then like confirm the SHA was the same.
Right. I think that's the ideal sort of end state. In the meantime, humans based on a web of trust is a not unreasonable thing, I think.
Okay, I have
and
to.
In fact, we may want to think about the structure of the manifest files into subdirectories so they can have individual owners, maybe.
I think you have multiple manifests, but we can talk about that maybe. I see Aaron doing his watch thing.
It's that time, y'all. I really appreciate everybody's time. This has been a helpful discussion. I look forward to seeing you all online and back here in 2 weeks.
Yep. Welcome aboard, Amy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Christoph, for the good context.